Okay, good morning, ma'am. Yeah. Okay. In the last class, we have discussed about our deadlocks. In that, first we have defined what is the system model, right? In general, we will be having several processes in the system, like P1, P2, P3, so on, Pn number of processes we will be having, and the resources we will be having like R1, R2, R3, so on, Rm. So m number of resources, n number of processes we are having, and these resources can be like printer we can have resource, and R2 can be a scanner, and this can be a monitor, R3, like this. We can consider even semaphore variable like mutex lock can also be considered as resource, that you keep in mind. Mutex lock or one particular variable can also be considered as resource. Why? Because suppose two process wants to modify one single variable, then each process should get access to the particular variable, so that can be considered as a resource. So there can be multiple resources, and let us assume this R1 consists of several, let us say printer. Okay, then several printers will come under one resource type called R1. Okay, we can have several printers. Similarly, several registers we can have. All registers can be considered as one particular resource type. And what we call those, suppose the 4 registers we have or 4 printers we have, those are instances of one particular resource type. Now you consider resource type is printer, then 4 printers we have, then how many instances we are having for the resource type printer? 4. Like that, we will be considering instances. Yeah, see here, resource type Ri has Wi instances. Next, each process will follow this sequence, that is, it requests for the resource and it will use the resource, then after using it will release the resource. Okay, this is the usual criteria that we are considering. Next, what are the necessary conditions to occur deadlock? Is one is mutual exclusion, that is no process, no two process can enter into critical section, no two process can utilize the resource at the same time. Due to this, deadlock may occur. Next, second one is hold and wait, that is by holding one resource it will request for another resource. Similarly, another process also will hold one resource and it will wait for another resource. But when this particular first process will be released is whenever the second process has acquired this first process, first resource, and completed its execution, then only it could able to get what the second resource can be held by first process. Then first process can complete its execution and releases both first resource and the second resource. Like this, this will also lead to deadlock. Next, third condition is no preemption. That means whenever it holds one resource, okay, it cannot be suppose one process P1, yeah, one process P1 has taken one resource, okay, it cannot be preempted, that cannot be released until its execution, then we can say it as no preemption. Okay, next, due to this also there can be a chance to occur deadlock. Next, fourth condition is circular wait, which is nothing but we have seen in detail about this circular wait in the last class. Yeah, it is like one process will be waiting for another one, like P0 will be waiting for P1, P1 will be waiting for P2, so on. Pn minus 1 will be waiting for Pn, and Pn will be waiting for P0. So it is like a circular waiting. Okay, due to this also deadlock will occur. What is the consequence of deadlock? What is the consequence of deadlock is whenever we consider a system has entered deadlock, then there is no chance of progress in the sense no process could able to complete its execution. That is the problem with deadlock. That's why we have to deal with deadlock in attentive manner. Yeah. And how we can consider this deadlock situation is by making use of resource allocation graph. Okay, by making use of resource allocation graph, we will come to know this particular situation is a deadlock. Like that we could able to consider. Yeah, what is meant by resource allocation graph? In short, RAG is it consists of vertices and edges. As it is a graph, it consists of vertices and edges. What are the vertices? Vertices are nothing but process and the resources. Both will be considered as vertices. Suppose if we have 4 process and 5 resource types, then we will be having total 9 vertices in the resource allocation graph. And how we will denote this process in the resource allocation graph is by using circle. And suppose P naught means we will enclose it within this P1. Like this we will denote process in the resource allocation graph. Next, coming to resources, we will be using square, and here we will denote like how many instances of that particular resource type we are having. Like 2 instances means we will be having 2 dots. Okay, 2 dots we will be having in the vertical square. Like this we will denote 9 vertices. Okay, some vertices will be of a process, which we will denote by using circles, and some vertices will be of resource types, and we will denote by using square. How many instances of that particular resource type we are having? Those many dots we will be mentioning here. Here we are having 2 instances, then we will mention like this. Even if we have only 1 instance, then we will be mentioning with 1 dot. Okay, like this we will use vertices. Next, what about edges? Edges can be from process to resource or resource to process. Okay, like this we will be having edges, like process to resource or resource to process. In the sense, suppose process P naught wants to utilize this, then it will approach this. Okay, this is the clue which we have seen in the last class as well. Suppose I wanted to give print, then I will approach the printer. So I am the process. So process, next resource is nothing but the printer. So I will request for the resource. Next, if the resource is held by the process, then we will denote in reverse. Okay, resource is held by the process, then we will denote with this assignment edge. Assignment edge is from resource to process, whereas request edge is from process to resource. Okay, like this 2 types of edges we will be using. Yeah, next these are all things we have seen. Yeah, this is the example. Here we are having 2 instances for R2, 3 for R3, 1 for R1, 1 for R3, and R3 is held by P3, and R1 is held by P2, R2 is held by P1. Next, P1 is requesting for R1. So P1 is requesting for R1. Next, P2 is requesting for R3. That's it. Yeah. And here you can observe 2 instances of R2 we are having. One instance is held by P2. Another instance is held by P1. Okay. Next, if you consider in this same context, but just we have additionally added this one. P3 is requesting for R2 instance. Then now P1 is holding one resource of type R2 and requesting for R1. Next, P2 is holding one resource, that is R2, and it is R2 and R1, and it is waiting for R3. And P3 is holding R3 and waiting for R2. It is like P1 is waiting for R2 to release. P2 is waiting for P3 to, sorry, P1 is waiting for P2 to release R1. Next, P2 is waiting for P3 to release R3, and P3 is waiting either P1 or P2 to release R2, isn't it? So now here you can observe there is one sequence, P1 to P2, P2 to P3, P3 to P1. It is nothing but circular wait. Okay, or you can consider in other way hold and wait as well, because every process is holding one resource and waiting for other resource in the set of process. So it will lead to deadlock due to these conditions, circular wait, hold and wait conditions. It will lead to deadlock. And even you can observe mutual exclusion as well. How we can observe mutual exclusion is, if one resource type instance is being utilized by P1, no other process could able to use that instance. So mutual exclusion is also one of the conditions is meeting here. Okay, all the four conditions we can observe. If deadlock is present, then definitely all the four conditions which we have seen, like mutual exclusion, hold and wait, no preemption, circular wait, all these things we could able to observe in deadlock situation. Yeah. Next, this is the example. Here if you observe, we are having R1 of two instances, and R2 is also of two instances. Now P4 held one resource and P1 held one resource, one instance. Next, yeah, now here if you observe, P1 is requesting for R1 and P3 is requesting for R2, but although it is waiting P3 to release, P3 is waiting P1 to release, let us say. Although it seems to be a circular wait, isn't it? It is circular wait, but here R1 can be released, R1 instance can be released by P2 as well. Okay, that means P1 is waiting for P2, and here also R2 instance can be released by P4, so P3 is waiting for P4. Okay, either of these is satisfied, automatically either P1 or P3 could able to complete its execution. Automatically this waiting can be avoided. Okay, this deadlock can be avoided. Got it? So now here if you observe, yeah, here if you observe, we are having a cycle in this. See, P1 to this, that here if you observe, P1 is one vertex and R1 is another vertex. So P1 to R1 we are having an edge. Next, from R1 to P3 we are having an edge. Next, P3 to R2 we are having an edge. Then R2 to P1 we are having an edge. So it is forming a cycle, isn't it? In graph, suppose if we have 5 vertices, with 5 vertices how we can form a cycle is, we need to have like this. Then we can consider it as a cycle. With 3 vertices, 3 vertices means we will be getting triangle. Okay, with 2 vertices how we can form a cycle? With 2 vertices we will be having like this. So here how many vertices are forming a cycle? 4 vertices. 1 2 3 4 vertices are forming a cycle. Whenever a cycle is formed, let us consider the previous one. Here also if you observe, we are having a cycle. Yes or no? Starting from P1 we can, yeah, starting from P1 we can go to R1, then P2, then R3, then P3, then R2, then P1. We have come back to P1, isn't it? So now we are having P1, then R1, then P2, R3, P3. Sorry, what happened? Yeah. Next, we are having to P1. So it is a cycle, isn't it? So we are starting at one vertex, and after visiting several vertices exactly once and coming back to the same vertex, this is nothing but a cycle. Now here we are having a cycle. Whenever we are having a cycle in the resource allocation graph, then we can say there is a chance of getting deadlock. Okay, whenever we have a cycle in the resource allocation graph, then we can say there is a chance of getting deadlock. But there is no guarantee that whenever we have a cycle, definitely there will be a deadlock. There can be some situations, even though if you have cycle inside resource allocation graph, there cannot be any deadlock. Okay, like here you can observe, here we are having the uh, cycle like from P1 to, yeah, P1 to R1, R1 to P3, then P3 to R2, then R2 to P1. So it is also a cycle. But although it is a cycle, due to other dependencies like R1 can be released by P2 and R2 can be released by P4 after its completion. So deadlock may never occur. So what is the evidence here is, if you have a cycle, if you have a cycle inside resource allocation graph, then there can be a possibility to have a deadlock. But we cannot guarantee that definitely deadlock will occur. But in other way, suppose if you don't have a cycle inside resource allocation graph, if you don't have a cycle, then we can guarantee that there is no deadlock. Understand the difference? If we have a cycle, we cannot guarantee whether deadlock exists or not, but there is a chance of having a deadlock. But if you don't have a cycle, then we can guarantee that there won't be any deadlock. Got it? Yes. See here, if graph contains no cycle, then no deadlock. This we can ensure. Suppose if a graph contains a cycle, then there are two situations. If we have only one instance per resource type, then deadlock will occur. Okay, if we have several instances per resource type, then there is a possibility of a deadlock. Okay, in both the situations, there is a possibility of a deadlock. But even if you have a cycle and we are having only one instance per each request, only one instance, exactly one instance for each resource type. Okay, then we can say each resource type, then we can say definitely deadlock will occur. Okay, suppose if you don't have exactly one, we can have two instances, three instances, or one instance for one resource type, two instances for other resource type, then we cannot guarantee deadlock will occur, but there is a chance of, there is a possibility of a deadlock. Understand the difference here? When we don't have a cycle, we will not be having a deadlock. If we have a cycle, and then we have to think about how many resource types, how many instances of resource types we are having. Like only one instance if we have for each resource type, then we will be having a deadlock. If you have more than one instance for a resource type, then there is a possibility of a deadlock. Okay, we cannot guarantee deadlock in second situation, but when we have only one instance per resource, then we can guarantee there is a deadlock. Okay, did you understand the point? Yes, any doubts, ma? Yes, please respond, ma. Is it clear? Yes, please respond, ma. Yeah. Next, now we will be seeing how we can handle with deadlock. Is we can handle in several ways. Like you consider deadlock as the problem. Okay, deadlock as the problem. Of course, it will lead to the problem called no progress. That is the problem. Okay. Now, whenever we have a problem, that problem can be avoided. Like without occurring this particular problem, without facing this problem, we can able to prevent that problem. It is like you consider health problem itself. Without getting that problem, we can prevent it. Okay, that is the first approach that we can have. Next, if we cannot able to prevent it, then we will try to avoid. Although it seems to be same, but I will tell you the difference. Okay, preventing is nothing but let us consider health problem itself. taking proper food or necessary food or such kind of thing, that is prevention. Okay, due to what deficiency one particular health problem may occur, that deficiency we will try to avoid. Okay, that is prevention. Okay, avoiding in the sense taking vaccine kind of thing. Okay, that is avoiding. Okay, suppose if you go to some place, it will occur means you will not go to that particular place. Such kind of thing, that can be considered as avoiding. Okay, next, if these two are also not possible, okay, that is deadlock prevention is not possible and deadlock avoidance is also not possible, then definitely deadlock will occur. Okay, after getting the deadlock, we will try to detect it. It is nothing but testing for corona, isn't it? We will detect it, then we will try to recover from it. After detecting, we will try to recover from it. Okay, that these are the several approaches to handle the deadlock. First, we will try to prevent it, then we will try to avoid it, then if these two are not possible, then we will get the deadlock. Then we have to detect whether deadlock has occurred due to which process or which process request it has led to deadlock, that we will detect. After detecting, we will try to recover. Okay, these are the approaches that we will be having. Okay, now let us see. Ensure that the system will never enter a deadlock state. Okay, that means we are having two possibilities, like deadlock prevention we can do, deadlock avoidance we can do. Okay, now coming to deadlock prevention. Deadlock prevention in the sense, before getting the deadlock, okay, before we will try to ensure that whatever the reasons which will lead to deadlock, we will try to avoid those itself. Okay, now coming to the reasons what will lead to deadlock, there are several conditions which will satisfy which will lead to deadlock, isn't it? There are four necessary conditions which we have seen earlier. One is mutual exclusion, hold and wait, hold and wait, no preemption, circular wait. Okay, these are the four conditions, four necessary conditions. If any of these occurred, automatically other things will be you can observe. Suppose circular waiting is there, definitely hold and wait will be there, mutual exclusion will be there, no preemption will be there. Suppose circular wait is let us consider hold and wait is there, definitely remaining three we can observe in some way. So if one occurred, then automatically remaining all will be present. Okay, on the other hand, if we can avoid one thing, okay, if we can ensure that one particular situation will not occur at all, okay, circular waiting will not occur at all, then we could able to prevent deadlock to occur. Try to understand the point here. These are the four necessary conditions. Okay, these four are not independent, we have discussed in the previous classes itself. These four are not independent. If one is ensuring, okay, then other three will lead automatically, obviously it will lead to deadlock. So now if we avoid one of these four conditions, then that is sufficient to claim that deadlock will never occur. Okay, that is the idea here for deadlock prevention. We will see how we can deal with these four, how we can prevent these four, one of these four we will see immediately. Yeah, next, coming to deadlock avoidance. Deadlock avoidance is nothing but if one particular process is requesting something, okay, then requesting for one resource, whether it is allowed to enter what you call allot this resource to this process or not, that we will check. Okay, depending upon that we will try to avoid the deadlock. Okay, there are several algorithms. Okay, two algorithms we are having for deadlock avoidance, we will see one by one. Next, as we have seen earlier, if the deadlock has occurred, okay, then how we can detect it and recover. Okay, this is another approach to handle deadlock. Okay, last one, of course, ignore the problem and we will leave that problem to the application programmer. He only will take care of the programs which he will be writing. Whether those programs will lead to deadlock or not, he needs to take care. Okay, like that, we will consider the final one. Final one is nothing but operating system. As operating system developer, we will not bother about. We will not bother about deadlock occurrence, whether it will occur or not, how we can handle the deadlock, all these things we will not consider as an operating system developer, that you keep in mind. But as an application programmer, he has to take care of writing programs without occurrence of deadlock. Okay, so that is the final one. In Windows and Unix, Windows and Unix, this final approach only be used, that is ignoring the problem by by giving the task to the application programmer itself. He only will take care of deadlock handling. Okay, that is about the handling deadlocks. Now we will see one by one: deadlock prevention, then deadlock avoidance, then deadlock detection and recovery. These things we will be seeing. Yeah, is this clear so far? Deadlock prevention is nothing but how we can stop that condition itself. Like we will be having four conditions: mutual exclusion, hold and wait, no preemption, and circular wait. These four we will try to avoid. If you avoid, if you prevent one thing, automatically remaining will be can be prevented automatically. Yeah, so these are the uh, four things. Okay, one by one we will be seeing. Mutual exclusion, what does it mean? Mutual exclusion is nothing but whenever request, what you call, resource is being used by one process, no other process could able to utilize this this resource. That is what the mutual exclusion. Okay, one resource is there that cannot be utilized by more than one process at a time. That is mutual exclusion. Now, if you consider mutual exclusion, we are having several resources. Let us consider we are having three processes and we are having three resources. Okay, out of these, let us these two processes requires these two. Okay, and these two processes require this resource. Now what these processes will do on these resource types is just whatever the files we are having, let us assume files as the resources, those files will be read by these processes. Okay, process P1, P2 will read these files. Okay, these process will not update any information in these files. Okay, now can we able to give access to these files simultaneously at the same time to P1 and P2? Yes. Why? Because these are the files intended for reading only. Okay, these are the files intended for reading only. So at a time, if you give access to P1 and P2 simultaneously on this particular file, then also there won't be any problem. So we will allow shareable resources to held by more than one process. Okay, but if non-shareable resource is there, okay, let us consider this is the resource which should not be shared between shared by more than one process, then it has to be held by only one process at a time. So this kind of situation will be the primary requirement of operating system. Why? Because critical section problem we have to handle, otherwise we cannot get consistency in processing. So this mutual exclusion is necessary condition for operating system, so we cannot avoid, we cannot stop this to occur. Mutual exclusion is definitely required for an operating system in order to make a system stable or system consistent. That's why what we will do is, for shareable resources we will allow, like read only files, we will allow more than one process to enter more than one process to utilize those resources. But for non-shareable resources, definitely we should hold this condition. Okay, we cannot prevent, we cannot relax this condition. Mutual exclusion is the essential condition to follow for any operating system. So it should be, it must hold for every non-shareable resource. Okay, that is the first one. Next, second one, how we can prevent this deadlock is hold and wait, by relaxing this hold and wait. So how we can prevent system to enter into this situation hold and wait is, whenever a system wants several resources, let us say P1 wants 4 resources and P2 wants 3 resources of same type, then it will request all 4 at the same time, all 4 resources at the same time. Whenever it gets, then only it will execute, it will start executing. Okay, and P2 will request all 3 at a time, and whenever it gets all 3, then only it will execute, it will start executing. Okay, due to this we could able to prevent the deadlock. Okay, here what can be done is like whatever the required process we have, it will request and be allocated all its resources before it begins execution. This is the key. Whenever it gets all the 4, then only it will execute, it will start its execution. Okay, and second type of approach is allow process to request resources only when the process has none allocated to it. Like you consider P1 requires 4 resources. Okay, one thing is all 4 resources at a time it will request, and whenever it gets all 4, then only it will start execution. Okay, it will start execution. This is the first approach. Second approach, P1 will require 4. Okay, let us say it got only 2 out of 4 required one, only 2, then it could able to request remaining 2 whenever it releases these 2. In the sense, if it initially it will not hold any resources, so number of resources held by this P1 will be 0, then it could able to request, then it will get 2. After that it needs 2 more resources, right? Then what it will do is it will utilize these 2, and it will make the number of resources held by P1 as 0. Then it will request for another 2 resources, then it could able to execute entire process. Got it? First it require 4, out of those 2 it has got, and those 2 resources will be utilized by P1. After using, it will release, then the number of resources will become 0. Now it can request for remaining 2 resources and it can get. Okay, due to this hold and wait can be prevented, this condition can be, this situation can be prevented. Okay, this is the second approach. In the first approach, straight away we are restricting that if all the resources are available, then only you start execution. In the second way, okay, you start execution, but you don't ask me in between the resources. If you wanted to ask, then you release whatever the resources you are holding, then you can request for other resources. Okay, like that, that is the second approach. By using this, we could able to avoid this hold and wait. But what will be the disadvantage in this approach is, let us consider P1 is holding, P1 requires 4 resources. Okay, all 4 it has got access, but it will use first resource for certain time. Afterwards, it don't require this first resource. Okay, it will process second one, third one, fourth one. Okay, now if you consider until utilization of fourth one, 1, 2, 3, until utilization of 4, 1, 2, 3 will be holding by, will be held by this P1 only. Okay, that is one thing. Another thing is, until completion of this 3, okay, 3 resources, fourth resource will also be held by P1 only. So unnecessarily we are holding resource, unnecessarily we are holding the resource 4. Why? Because after completion of these 3 only we require resource 4, let us assume. Then unnecessarily we are holding, that means it will lead to low resource utilization. Okay, let us consider we wanted to, it is like what we can say is, yeah, one printer is there. I wanted to take one printout. Okay, printer is there. I wanted to take printout. Let us say P1 is the process which requires this resource. This resource. Yeah, this is the printer. Yeah. Now, in order to give that printout, it needs to get some file from the user. Okay, from some what you call external hard disk. External hard disk. It needs to access. That means it needs to get access to the hard disk, and it needs to copy that to the local system. After that, P1 will give the printer. Okay, until so it requires hard disk, it requires local hard disk access, and it requires printer. These are the three resources required by P1. Suppose P1 holds these three process all the time. Okay, initially only it requests for all three, and it will be held by P1. Then what will happen is this particular printer will be waiting until these all things completed. So at that time, printer can be utilized by other process, and if you hold this particular printer all the time, then it cannot be properly utilized, isn't it? That is nothing but low resource utilization. Okay, and if this particular approach is there, what will happen is one more problem. Suppose another process required this particular printer. Let us assume same context. P2 also requires this printer, but P1 is holding for long time, isn't it? P1 is holding for long time. Although P1 requires for a small amount of time this resource, P1 is holding for long time. So it will lead to the problem called starvation. What is starvation? Indefinite blocking. Okay, indefinite blocking. It is like suppose in the class some 50 people are there. Okay, 2 or 3 people want to ask doubt. Okay, I will be taking one doubt from one student, and I will be keep on discussing on that particular doubt only. Okay, I will not give chance to second student to ask doubt. Okay, that is nothing but starvation. Indefinite blocking. How much time I will be keep on engaging on the first doubt? That is unnecessary waiting for second one to wait, isn't it? So that is starvation. That is the problem. So these are the things like mutual exclusion cannot be fully avoided. Next, hold and wait can be avoided in two strategies. One is requesting all together, and requesting whenever number of resources held by the process is 0. Okay, these are the two approaches, but it is having the two disadvantages like low resource utilization and starvation. These two are the problems. Yeah. Next, next, third one is no preemption. Here what we will do is no preemption in the sense, if a process holding one resource, okay, let us say this is the resource, then it will not release until its execution. Okay, until its completion of execution. But what is the strategy that we will use here is, if P1 is holding this resource and it requires several other resources also, then what it will do is it will preempt this resource for some time. Okay, like you consider P1 requires 5 resources. Okay, now presently P1 holds 3 resources, and we are having, other than these 3, we are having 3 more resources, let us say. Okay, 3 more resources. Now what it will do is, it will preempt these 3. Okay, it will preempt these 3 resources, and it will be added to the available one. Whenever the available ones is greater than or equal to the required one, then these all can be what you call allocated to process P1. Like you consider we are having only one resource after allocating 3 resources to P1. Then what it will do is, P1 will preempt the usage of these three resources, and these three will be added to the available ones. Now, if required one is 5, we are having only 4, so it must wait. Then it again these three can be holded. Okay, like this it will sense, it will try to request for other resources by preempting the resources. Okay, this is possible whenever we are having, let us say P1 is holding some registers. Okay, these are registers. 4 registers are held by P1, and it needs 2 more registers. Okay, total 6 registers needed by P1, 4 registers held already. Now what it will do is, whatever the values of registers we are having, these will be stored in some temporary storage. Okay, these will be these values will be stored in storage, and these registers can be released, so that whenever it got all the 6 registers, then again these 6 register values, out of these 6, 4 register values we can get back, we can restore the state from storage to these 4, isn't it? So whatever the state we are having, that we are preserving into storage, then from the storage we can restore back whenever all the resources of that particular type exist, are available to use by this process P1. So no preemption is nothing but if a process that is holding some resources requests another resource that cannot be immediately allocated to it, then all resources currently being held are released. Okay, all will be released. Okay, whenever preempted resources are added to, these resources are released, then these will be added to the list of resources available. Then automatically other process could able to complete their execution, and number of resources held by those process can be released, isn't it? That is the idea here. Next, process will be restarted only it can regain its own old resources as well as new ones that is requesting. Okay, all these resources are available, then only process could able to restart. Okay, this is the strategy that we will use to prevent this no preemption condition. Okay, next you consider circular wait. Circular wait in the sense P1 will be waiting for P2, P2 will be waiting for P3, so on. Pn will be waiting for P1. This is what the circular waiting. Here what we will do is, P1 could able to wait for P2, P2 could able to wait for P3. All these things we will follow as it is, but P3 could not able to wait for P2. That means whenever you consider Pi, Pj, Pi, Pj, Pj should not wait for any Pi which is less than, which is if I is less than j, then Pj should not wait for Pi. Okay, this kind of approach we will consider, so that what will happen is, there is no possibility to have this circular wait. Okay, that is the strategy we will use for avoiding or preventing circular wait. Here we are imposing a total ordering of all resource types and require that each process request resources in an increasing order of enumeration. Increasing order of enumeration, like P1 could able to request for P5, isn't it? P1 is waiting for P5. Is it allowed or not? Yes, please respond. Yes, please respond, ma. P1 could able to wait for P5. Yes, P6, P7, all those things are allowed. But P6 cannot wait for P1. P6 cannot wait for P5. Okay, this is also not allowed. That means whenever we have Pi and Pj, Pi could able to wait for Pj provided I is less than j. But if j is less than I, then Pi should not be waiting for Pj. Okay, by this we can prevent this circular waiting. Okay, this is these are the 4 things, and this is the example where we can observe deadlock may occur. Like you consider simple thing, we wanted to transfer, we wanted to transfer some amount from account to account. Okay, let us consider we are having A and B. Okay, from this account to this account we wanted to transfer. Okay, let us say 25 we wanted to transfer to B, and similarly another transaction is 50 rupees I wanted to transfer from B to A. Okay, in order to do this one, what we need is, first of all, we need to get access to from account. Okay, from account is A, so transaction 1 will be holding A. Next, transaction 2 is what? Transferring from B to A. So transaction 2 will be holding the, will have the lock on B. Okay, transaction 1 will have the lock on A. Now, in order to transfer this 25 to B, transaction 1 needs B access. Okay, it will try to get access to B as well. But can T1 is able to get the lock on B? No. Why? Because it is held by T2 already. So it has to wait. Next, T2 also requires access to A. Why? Because it has to deposit this 50 to A. So T2 will be requesting A. Okay, will be requesting for the resource type A. So T2 also needs to wait. T1 will be waiting for T2 and T2 will be waiting for T1, which will lead to deadlock. Here you can observe. See here, first mutex we are locking first mutex, then we are locking second mutex, then we are doing some work here, then we are unlocking both the locks. Okay, this is the one we are running. Next, in the second transaction, what we are doing, we are getting the second lock and then first lock, then we are doing the work, then we are releasing both the locks. So now after getting the first lock, it will wait. Okay, by the time second lock will be held by the second process. Next, it will be waiting for the first lock to be released and it will be waiting for second lock to be released. So it is nothing but a cycle and it will lead to deadlock. Okay, this can be understood by the using this also. Transaction 1, transaction 2, A and B. We wanted to transfer 25 from A to B and 50 from B to A. Okay, transaction 1 is to transfer 25 from A to B. Transaction 2 is to transfer 50 from B to A. Then transaction 1 requires both the accounts access at the same time. Transaction 2 requires both the accounts access at the same time. But transaction 1 is holding A and waiting for B. Transaction 2 is holding B and waiting for A. It is nothing but hold and wait, or in other sense we can say this is circular waiting as well. And no preemption also you can observe here. While A is holding one resource, it is not being released until its completion, so no preemption is there. And whenever A is being held by T1, T2 cannot utilize A, that is nothing but mutual exclusion. So all the conditions are being satisfied and it will lead to deadlock. Okay, next you consider deadlock avoidance. We have seen so far deadlock prevention. What are the strategies? See, deadlock prevention we have seen. Mutual exclusion cannot be avoided. So for non-shareable resources, we will apply mutual exclusion. For shareable resources, we will allow multiple processes to enter into, can utilize the resources. Okay, that is mutual exclusion. Next, no preemption, hold and wait, circular wait. Circular wait can be avoided, can be prevented by using total ordering, like linear ordering we will be using. P1 will be requesting P1, P2, P3, P4, so on like that. But P3 cannot be waiting for P2. P3 cannot be waiting for P1, like that. We can avoid circular waiting. Next, no preemption in the sense, whenever it wants to, process wants to get additional resources, it will preempt the resources and will be restarted once it gets all the old resources which are held by this process and new resources required. Okay, that is no preemption. Next, coming to hold and wait, there are two strategies. All together we have to request, or whenever the number of resources are 0, then only we have to request. These are the two strategies. So like that we have seen deadlock prevention. Next, coming to deadlock avoidance. Yeah, deadlock avoidance is nothing but yeah, deadlock avoidance. Here we require some additional information to perform deadlock avoidance. In the sense, how many resources are required, that information is nothing but a priori information. Okay, prior to execution only, we need to know some additional information. That information we can call it as a priori information. Here, what is the a priori information is how much time a process request resource is required for a process. This can be some a priori information, like you consider printer is needed, how much time you want, that is a priori information. Understand? Suppose I wanted to access external hard disk, data from external hard disk, how much data you wanted to access, or how much time you wanted to store the data into external hard disk, like that, that can be considered as the a priori information. In general, maximum number of resources of each type, this can be the a priori information. How many maximum resources that you require, that can be the a priori information. Now, deadlock avoidance algorithm dynamically examines the resource allocation state and ensure that circular wait condition will not occur. Okay, it will check, like suppose process 1, process 2, process 3, like this, several process we are having. Whenever it requires one resource, then it will check whether it is leading to circular waiting or not. Depending upon that, it will try to give the permission. So this is nothing but deadlock avoidance preliminary intuition. Now we will see how we could able to ensure deadlock never occurred. Yeah, resource allocation state is defined by the number of available and allocated resources and the maximum demands of the process. Okay, what is this resource allocation state here? Resource allocation state is nothing but how many are available. Let us consider we are having 10 resources. We are having 10 resources. Out of those, how many are allocated? Let us say 3 we have allocated. And how many available we have? 7 available. And what are the what is the demand of each process? Like 5 process can 5 resources can be required by one process, 3 by another process, 2 by another process. Okay, total 10 resources we require, but 3 are already held by some process, and this is the requirement of P1, this is the requirement of P2, this is the requirement of P3. Now you consider 10, 3, 7. 10 is the total number. Okay, 3 already allocated, 3 available, sorry, 7 available. Out of these 7, can we allocate 5 for P1? Yes, so P1 could able to complete its execution, and these 5 also can be added to the available, isn't it? So after completion, 5 will be added to this available one, so it will be restored to 7 itself. Got it? Try to understand here. 7, you consider 7 resources are available and 5 are required by P1, 3 are required by P2, and 2 are required by P3. And already these all acquired are these P1, P2, P3 already holding one resource. Okay, one resource for each. Okay, now in order to complete P1, it requires 5 more resources. In order to complete P2, it requires 3 more resources. In order to complete P3, it requires 2 more resources. Now, if I give 3 resources to P1, then how many it will be? 3 resources to P1, then it will be 4 resources. Now, how many will be available? 4. Next, you consider 2 resources I have given to P2. Then total 3 will be held by P2, and here how many will be available? 2. Next, 2 more resources I will be giving to P3. So total how many resources? Now it will become 0, and P3 requires only 2 more resources. 2 we have already allocated. So P3 could able to complete its execution. Then whatever the resources held by P3, that is a total 3, these 3 will be added to the available one. Why? Because P3 has completed its execution. So all these resources are available to use by other process. Next, similarly, now 3 resources we are having. How many additionally we require here? Only 1 required for P2. So 1 we can allocate. So here we will be getting 2. And now what will happen? We will be getting total 4 resources for P2. Now P2 could able to complete its execution, and the total number of resources will become what? Yes, please respond, ma. P2 holding 4 resources. After its completion, P2 could able to release all the 4. Then the available resources will be 6. Why? Because 2 plus 4 resources which will be added by P2. Next, now P1 requires 2 more resources. Why? Because out of these 5, 3 we have already allocated. So 2 more only. Those 2 we can allot from those 6. So if you allot here, how many resources will be available now? 4 only. Here we are having 6. After utilization of these 6 resources, P1 will release all these 6. Then it will become 10 resources available. Okay, now 10 resources we are having. Initially 1 P1, P2, P3 has taken. Next, it requires 5, 3, 2. Then in this particular process, we could able to complete the allocation, and every process could able to complete its execution. Okay, this is resource allocation state example. Just to understand what is resource allocation state, we need to know the number of available, like number of available, that is 7, and allocated resources are 3, number of available are 7, and the maximum demands of the process, like for process 1, process P1 5, process P2 3, process P3 2. Okay, this is nothing but resource allocation state. By considering this, by examining this resource allocation state, it will ensure that deadlock avoidance algorithm will ensure that it will not enter into this circular wait condition. Okay, that is nothing but deadlock avoidance. How it will ensure that we will see. Okay, try to understand what we are trying to learn. Deadlock avoidance we wanted to perform. In order to do that one, dynamically we will be examining resource allocation state. What is resource allocation state? It is nothing but the available resources and what you call allocated resources and the maximum demands of the process. These all things all together we will consider as resource allocation state. Okay, this will be examined all the time in order to avoid this circular wait condition. If we avoid this circular wait condition, automatically we will avoid deadlock. That's what the intention here. Yeah. Now you consider the term called, sorry, it's 10:30. Okay, sorry. Let us discuss this one in the next class.